when you're trying to just be with the baddie, because I gotta be with them. Ooh, I almost spilled my drink, y'all. If we stop fighting, that means something's wrong. Validation feels good. I ain't even gonna lie. But validation is not the same thing as connection.
Please note that any opinion expressed on this show is my own opinion and does not reflect the opinion of my employer or any organization that I'm associated with or affiliated with for that matter.
Hey y'all, welcome back to A Sip with Samad, and I'm your host Samad. This season, we'll be having conversations around topics of masculinity, maleness, blackness, queerness, fatherhood, all those things. And we're trying to really center in on having conversations on topics that men don't typically have the space and or the words to talk about. And so today, we're going to talk about something men think they understand very well. And that is what they want, right? Men oftentimes will confidently tell you their type, right? But I'm not sure we've ever really asked ourselves, where did that come from? So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, take a breath and let's take a sip.
Hey, kings and queens and everything in between. Welcome to this episode of A Sip with Samad podcast. And I'm your host, Samad. Let's jump in.
So for those who are familiar with the show, you all know that I like to open up each of the episodes, just pouring a little bit into the conversation. And I like to say that this is what I like to use to get the conversation started a bit. And so here's what I want you to sit with today. Your type is not random. You didn't invent your preferences. They were shaped. The question is, by what? By what? Like, we're really quick to say, men, I like athletic women. Or I like a red bone. I gotta get a red bone. I love me some light-skinned women, right? Men, I love a big butt. I like quiet. I like dominant. I like feminine. I like strong. But rarely do we ask, why does that feel safe to me? Why does that feel attractive to me? And what does that say about what I need? And so I want to start with the obvious, right? Like physical attraction matters, right? It definitely does. I'm not pretending that it doesn't, but I really had to ask myself at some point, did I choose what that I'm attracted to, or did culture hand it to me? Did media show me what was desirable? Did music videos tell me what I needed to crave? Or did porn teach me the dynamics before real intimacy ever did? And so sometimes what we call preferences, is it repetition? I feel like we call it preference, but it's more so what we see often. And so I had to sit down with whether I was attracted to certain body types because I genuinely desired them or because they symbolize power or they symbolize protection or they symbolize validation. Like, that's uncomfortable. And so, seriously, when you think about your type, does it resemble someone or something from your past? I remember me and Alan were in couples therapy, and it was funny because, you know, one of the things Alan was describing his mom, and he was describing how she was this very charismatic woman. I never had a chance to meet her, unfortunately. And so I go based upon how he describes her. And she was very family centered. She was all about her children. But she also didn't take no shit. She didn't play no games. She taught that consequences were a thing. For every action, there was a consequence. Like, I love this woman who I'd never met. But I say all that to say we were in couples therapy and Alan was describing his mom, and in describing his mom, the therapist said, now describe Samad. And that it was like, oh, well, God damn it. I might be dating my mother, right? And so it's, once again, I asked the question, is it more so just something that resembles someone or something from your past? Fair question. Something to think about. So now here's where it starts to get interesting. Like once you move beyond aesthetics, you start to realize that some people don't just have a physical type. They have a conflict type. Like I've heard people say, if we stop fighting, that means something's wrong. Like the argument itself was a proof of a connection. And I've always been curious about that, right? Because when did conflict become compatibility? Seriously, when did conflict become compatibility? Because I've been in houses where everybody's been going back and forth, like roasting, snapping, arguing like it's a sport. And for some people, that's normal. That's passion. That's fire. That's showing you love. So when they get into something calm, something steady and something stable, it actually starts to feel boring and it starts to feel real flat and it starts to feel like something is missing. But what if what's missing isn't love? What if what's missing isn't drama? What if your baseline is drama, peace might feel suspicious? Like, all I know is drama. So you tell it, like, that's like people who can't sleep without a TV on in the bedroom. So people can't sit in their quietness, in their thoughts. Anything quiet seems suspicious to them. I guess it's the same in this regard. If we don't have drama, peace, once again, just don't seem right. So now I didn't grow up in a silent house. I grew up in a very, I would say I grew up in a big family, and conflict happened, but it got resolved. We moved on, and it didn't necessarily define the atmosphere. And even now, me and Alan are like conscious of that with Avery, because what you normalize at home becomes what you tolerate later. And so I'm always thoughtful about that, about how we show up, about how we're shaping what Avery's type will be like. And, I would say I'm glad that she gets a good balance of fire and ice, because that's what we are. If we were a singing group, me and Alan, our name would be Fire and Ice. I think that goes well. So anyway, so when someone says like, I need that fire, I don't judge it, right? I just ask, is that chemistry or is that familiarity? I can never say this damn word. Damn me. Familiarity. There you go. Is that chemistry or is that familiarity? Because like adrenaline can feel like connection. Like there are times like when you meet people and that adrenaline of like what they give you seems like this is the right person. This has to be the person I'm supposed to be with. And it's really just more the fact that you just are familiar with it. But adrenaline isn't the same thing as like alignment. It's not. So, all right, let me go somewhere a little dangerous, right? How much of your type is about attraction and how much of it is really about optics? I'm asking that question, and I want you to be completely honest. You answering it for yourself. But would you still want them if nobody could see you with them? I'm saying that as someone who is a firm believer that nobody wants somebody that nobody wants. And so would you still want them if nobody could see you with them? Because sometimes what we call preference is really presentation. Sometimes your type is more of a flex. It's more of a look what I did. It's more of a proof of who you are, a proof of your identity. Like we don't really talk about how sometimes a lot of the shit that we do, the cars, the people, the house, is all things to prove something. Proof that you made it, proof that like you're desirable, proof that you can pull this one. I pulled the baddest one up in here, right? That you're not who you used to be, even in some cases. And I had to sit with that. Like, there were moments in my life where I looked at what we looked like together. It wasn't just about them. It was like what we both looked like together. Like, were we symmetrical? Were we both aesthetically pleasing? Like, or were we giving power couple? And the fact of the matter is, I didn't even have examples of that. So that was the crazy part of it all, is that within all that, I had no examples of what a symmetrical queer Black couple looked like, a queer Black male couple looked like. I had examples of what, some people around us, but they were train wrecks. They were, that was horrible to say, but it was true. But I had no examples of the power couples and as a Black queer male. And so I do, yeah, we didn't have that. That's an interesting thing to think about. Like, within that, you're looking for something when you like. The whole thought of this episode is I ain't really got no type, but how do you know your type when you ain't really seen examples of your type being successful? And so you really are navigating on this whole principle and trying to convince yourself that this is really all about love, right? But sometimes it's about, in this particular instance, trying to just make sure I look good when you're trying to just be with the baddie, because I got to be with the, I almost spilled my drink, y'all. You just got to be with the baddie. Especially if you grew up feeling small. You might want someone that's impressive. Or if you grew up unseen, you might want someone who is stunning so that you can now be seen. If the room didn't react, would you still react the same way? Like, if your friends didn't approve, would you still pursue them? Because I've seen people fall in love with the applause and then end up like confusing it for a connection. And here's what I think where it gets real for me. Like, people validate Alan all the time. Like, I'm not blind. I know my husband fine. But the difference now is that I don't need the room to confirm it for me. Like, and I think that that's growth. That's growth, because there was a version of me that did care, that did notice, that did measure, that, and it was not maliciously, it was just honestly. And I think that growth sometimes looks like realizing you don't need your relationship to be a resume, because your partner is your trophy. I mean, I think because if your partner is your trophy, you will always be performing. And I think that if your partner is your trophy, you'll always be performing, and performance is exhausting. Like, I could care less about what people think about like who it is that I dated. But I do remember at a certain point in life, I recall how my friends and the people around me were starting to dictate who it was that I was finding interesting, and them sort of opining in who they found interesting. I realized that I was like going on dates with jerks and shit. Like, they were I'm like, these are not people that I'm interested in. But it was because that I thought that this is what I should be into and what I should like. And so I say all that to say, go with what you know, go with what you're interested in. But let's really talk honestly. How much of your type elevates your image? If you're ambitious, do you need someone impressive? If you grew up feeling small, do you need someone admired? If you felt invisible, do you really need someone who worships you? That's not attraction. That's really more so identity repair. And sometimes what we call love is validation. So I feel like I've been here, there, and everywhere. On that note, let me take a sip. Let me bring this together. If you've heard nothing else from me today, I want you to hear these three things. First is your type is not random. It was shaped by culture. It was shaped by family. It was shaped by early imprints. But what you saw modeled, what you survived, if you don't interrogate that, you'll start conditioning chemistry, right? You will call conditioning chemistry. Sit with that for a second. If you don't address what you've modeled, like what you saw and what modeled what you are attracted to, you'll just be taking your condition and saying that that's what I like. That's my chemistry. That's what attracts me. The second thing is that conflict is not compatibility. Like, hey, I love roller coasters. I'm not trying to be on one every goddamn day. Adrenaline is not intimacy. Just because something feels intense does not necessarily mean that it's aligned. And familiarity does not, like, it can feel powerful, but familiar is not always safe. And the third thing and the last thing is that if your attraction depends on applause, you're not choosing a partner. You're choosing presentation. Validation feels good. I ain't even gonna lie. But validation is not the same thing as connection. If you've never really examined the architecture of your desire, you will repeat your patterns and continue to call it preference. That was heavy. Now that we've laid that to the rest, let's move on to something a little bit more joyous. And I want to pivot into the From Where I Sit segment, one of my favorite segments of the show, partly because it's unscripted. You all submit in questions that our producers field. And so please, I encourage you all to continue to submit questions to us on our YouTube channel and through social media platforms. I don't get a chance to read these questions, even though our producers encourage me to do this every week. But I did promise them that I would be honest, and I did promise them that I would try to offer a sense of brevity in my response. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. All right, let's see. The first question is, how do I know if my type is healthy? That's a good question. I mean, so here's the thing. If I had to liken types to diets, right? I can't tell you what is healthy for you. I only know my body. I only know me. I can speak for me. And so you can only know if your type is healthy for you. You can only know whether or not you can take the keto diet or whether or not you are on a paleo diet or whether or not you can do a Mediterranean diet. Like, that's what you know about yourself. And so I think that you have to figure out, I guess, if whether or not this type is adding value or whether or not it's subtracting value. I think that that's how I would determine whether or not your type is healthy for you. But I can't tell you that. But you have to know what's adding value to your life. And you also have to know what's subtracting value from your life. And so that if I had to determine, right, whether or not a type was healthy for me, I would be basing it on that. Because if we're not moving forward, we're moving backwards. Period. The second question is, can your type evolve? I think so. I think, that's the joy of dating, right? I do think that as you start to date people, you start to learn more and more about what your type is and what your type is not. You start to learn more about what it is that you may be willing to deal with and what you are not willing to deal with, right? Or whether or not you like people who chew with their mouth open or not. Like, I think you just start to learn more about people. And that's all it really boils down to, right? Is that the more you go out on dates, I think that's what dating and courting is. Dating and courting is all about learning people. And so, yes, I do think your type can, or your attraction can evolve, but I think that with exposure, it can do that. One thing I often remind myself, I remember asking myself, my grandmother, this some time ago, and I was just like, why you ain't go find something else? If the men were out here just living life the way that they were living, being Rolling Stones. And, the thing is back then you didn't really know you had options. And so that's why I say courting and dating is, I think, important because it allows you to see what options are available. And so, yeah, I do think your type can evolve or your attraction can evolve. The next question is, how do you separate preference from prejudice? Preferences from prejudice? I don't know. And I can't say that I've necessarily mastered that. I can't necessarily say that I've mastered that. I ask myself that question all the time. So I don't necessarily know. I don't have an answer to that. Sure. How do you separate preference from prejudice? You wanted me to read it again to do what? Oh, okay. No, I was like, I froze to see what you wanted me to do with that. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. You just like read it again. Yeah, I don't know how I separate preference from prejudice. I don't know if I don't know. I didn't know I was being prejudiced, to be honest with you. And so I never really thought about myself as being prejudiced. Yeah. How do you? Who the hell asked me that? So how do you stop repeating the same dynamic? I do think that in order for one to stop repeating the same dynamic, you have to be self-aware. And I do think that that's what a lot of people lack. And a lot of people don't want to know about themselves. They don't want to be self-aware because if you are self-aware, I think that the work comes with having to fix the problem. But I do think that like that's where you get to the stopping of repeating the same dynamics in your relationships or the people that you're developing relationships with. I definitely think that it's about being aware of who you are. And if you're aware of who you are, then you can also be aware of who you want and what you want. And the last question is, how do I know I actually like them or just like how we look? I mean, I think that's a good question. And it's hard for me to answer that because I've never been in a situation where I've dated someone who it was all like, it was about, I think, is that what you're focusing on? Like, if you're asking yourself, are our babies going to look cute? Like, if that's all you're thinking about or how you look together and how you look in pictures, but you don't know nothing about this person, do you even know their family? Do you know anything about, like, are you taking a chance to get to know who they are beyond just what they look like? I think that's how you know if you actually like them. And once you get to know them beyond the aesthetics, are you still attracted to them? Hell, sometimes you learn after having sex with somebody, you're not attracted to them. So I just say all that to say, it's like, are you learning about who they are? Are you beyond the gaze of their aesthetic? And once you get beyond that, I think that you should be able to see a little bit more clearly, maybe not fully clearly, but a little bit more clearly about whether or not you like them beyond what they look like. We ain't even get on the topic of liking them beyond sex because some of y'all just get all caught up in that, but that's a whole other episode. At any rate, this episode was about what a man wants and it's often a reflection of what shaped him. And what a man needs is often quieter. It's less flashy. It's less performative, but more honest. And sometimes I think the work isn't finding a better partner. It's understanding why you keep choosing the same one. And that, everybody, I think it's a wrap. Once again, we never come to a clear close. But if this episode struck you, if something was poignant, if you disagreed, I'm okay with that too. Go ahead and continue to like, share, and subscribe and comment, okay? As well, because I think this is what the whole purpose of this show is about. It's about having discourse. It's about having conversation. It's about having elevated conversations. And so like, share, subscribe, and then share it with a friend. And if your friend said that they already are subscribed, make sure that they shared it with a friend and told that friend to share it as well. But until then, until next time, you all, I am out.